Good evening, and welcome to the April 30th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. Tonight, there are 6 voting members. Jody Record and M.L. Geffert are both appointed voting members in the absence of David Rayum and Jeffrey Mattson. The chair is also absent tonight. Originally, there were only supposed to be 5 members on the board tonight. And we had given the applicants the option of postponing. If the applicants do so wish to continue to postpone, even though there are 6 members here, we will allow that, as you had previously been told that there would only be 5 voting members present. So with that, I will read the first application into the record. And again, when we call these applications into the record, you have the option of asking for a postponement at that time. Okay, so the first request is new business, and it is A, the request of Elizabeth Corson, owner, for property located at 229 Pleasant Street, Unit 4, whereas relief is needed for the following. 1, a variance from section 10.515.14 to install a mechanical unit 5.5 feet from the side property line, whereas 10 feet is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 108, Lot 6, and lies within the mixed residential office and historic district. Is there anyone here to speak to this application? Please come forward. And as a first order of business, would you like to postpone this application to the next meeting?
No, I prefer to proceed. Thank you for asking.
Okay. So you have 15 minutes to present your application to the board. After that, public hearing will open, and well, actually, the public hearing is open now. And then members of the public who wish to speak to, for, or against the application have 5 minutes to speak. So if you could please identify yourself and your address for the record and start with your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Beth Corson. My address is 229 Pleasant Street in Portsmouth. And I appreciate your offering me the opportunity to postpone this application. I live in the carriage house that's just on the other side of South Mill Pond here. I hope most of you are familiar with it. In the package of items that I submitted, and I'm hoping that you got them, I struggled with the process of submitting various documents. So hopefully you got a site plan when this property was converted to a condo. It's a 4-unit condo. There's a main house with 3 units, and then I own the carriage house. And from the front door of my carriage house, I can see 2 properties that have mini splits that do not appear to meet the bulk regulations for this district. I imagine that they came before this or another board quite some time ago. There's also 2 other mini splits that don't appear to meet the bulk regulations. Actually, one on my property, one that's been approved but not built on my property. So I'm hoping that the board will take that into consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the application.
Could you please address the 5 criteria for the variance?
Off the top of my head?
Here, perhaps on the narrative for your submission.
Thank you.
Just give them back when you're done. Thanks.
Okay.
I think I gave you the variance one. Did I give you special exception? I'm sorry.
So I did answer all these and submit them, and now you want me to read? I didn't bring it with me. Do you folks have that?
We do, but for purposes of a public hearing, you have to address the criteria.
Oh.
It's up on the screen if you need to reference it.
I can't see from here.
It's okay. If you read the criteria and then you just explain to us.
Okay. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. I feel it would not be contrary to the public interest because where the proposed location is for the condenser is the only location on the property that is not visible to the public. It is only visible to an adjoining property owner, and you should have a letter in your file from that property owner saying that they have no objection to this application. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. I feel that it does observe the spirit of the ordinance for the reasons I stated initially. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. I feel that that criteria has been met, given that there are 4 others within, proximity of mine that already do apparently have a variance. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, given that there are 4 others that can be seen from my property, I feel that that criteria has also been met.
One
And
more.
criteria 5, please.
Turn it over.
Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. I feel that I've met that in that there's no other location where the public would, any other location the public would see. This is the only location where the public will not see, because it's in between, it's in a sort of alleyway between my property and the adjoining property.
Okay. Do any members of the board have a question for the applicant? Mr. Neese?
Just one, Madam Chair. Could you elaborate a little bit on why the chosen location is the most efficient for the use of the condenser? In your letter, you mentioned that, let me see if I can find it. If you put it somewhere else, it will be inefficient and incur greater costs to you.
I actually had an application last year, and that one called for it to be in the front of the carriage house, which meant the lines to the actual inside units would be much longer. And I'm told the efficiency is diminished if the lines are longer.
So that would be the same problem if it was on the back of the house? I acknowledge that it would be visible from Pleasant Street, I think, if it was on the back.
If it's on the back of my house is the front of Richmond Street.
So then, the front of your house.
The front, the front of my house is visible from Pleasant Street.
Right.
The back of my house is visible from Richmond Street. So either front or back would be visible to the public at large. And this location in between my property and the adjoining property is the only location where it's only visible to that adjoining property owner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neese. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Rossi?
With regard to the memo from Bridget Bailey and the condominium association, are both the properties referenced in this memo, yours and the Murrow property, part of the condominium association?
Murrow property is not. Murrow is the adjoining property owner who submitted the letter saying that they have no objection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, members of the board. Thanks for helping me with
Thanks.
this.
Sure.
And we will call for members of the public who would like to speak for this application. Please stand up. Is there anyone on Zoom, Jillian?
An attendee, but no raised hand.
No raised hands, okay. And is there anyone who would like to speak against this application? And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against this application? And no raised hand, Jillian?
Still no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. So the public hearing is closed. And I await discussion or a motion from the board.
I will make a motion to approve the application for variance as presented and advertised.
Okay, and any seconds? Second by Mr. Mannel. Please go forward, Mr. Rossi.
Okay. With regard to granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. Taking those two together, the general purpose of the setback requirements in our zoning ordinance is to preserve open space and light between structures. This is a very low profile unit. It will not create, cast any shadows or in any significant bulking way infringe upon the open space between this property and the adjoining property. The granting of variance would do substantial justice. There is no loss to the public. The unit is placed out of sight of the general public and would not have a detrimental impact on the character of the historic district, and therefore this denying the variance would create a burden for the applicant, which is not properly counterbalanced by a loss to the public for approving the variance. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of the surrounding properties. The most near adjacent affected abutter has submitted a letter of support for the variance, indicating that that person who's in the best position to estimate the impact on the value of their property has determined that it would not have a negative impact on the value of their property. And literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. The hardship of the property is that this is in it's a crowded area with substandard size lots, and there is no, the purpose of the ordinance is not to prevent the modernization of HVAC units within a residential community like this, and therefore this literal enforcement of the ordinance really does not bear any does not have any bearing on the purpose of the ordinance. And that's it. That's why that's satisfied. Thank you.
Anything from the second?
I agree with everything Mr. Rossi said. I mean, these types of variances, especially for mechanical units, are quite common in a city that is 400 years old. I think we should approve.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? ML?
Just for the record, wherever we see mini splits, to the extent that there's no real major dimensional change, I really want to encourage them, just from an efficiency standpoint. I think they're a great replacement for AC.
Anything else? Okay. I will call the motion. The motion is to approve the variance as presented and advertised. Ms. Gifford?
Aye, yay, yes. You betcha.
All of those.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Ms. Gifford?
I mean, nope.
I'm sorry. Ms. Record?
Chairman disease.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Your variance is approved. The next item of business is B, the request of Geary Portsmouth 505 Incorporated owner for property located at 505 US Route 1 bypass, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing structure and construct a new hotel with a drive-through restaurant, which requires the following relief. 1, a special exception from 10.440 use 10.40 hotel, where it is permitted by special exception. 2, variance from section 10.835.32 to allow 5 feet between the lot line and drive-through and bypass lanes where 30 feet is required for each. 3, variance from section 10.835.31 to allow 18 feet between the menu and speaker board and the front lot line where 50 feet is required. 4, variance from section 10.5B22.20 to allow up to 60 feet in building height within 50 feet of the street right-of-way line, whereas up to 45 feet is permitted. 5, variance from section 10.5B 34.70 to allow up to 60 feet in building height, whereas 50 feet is permitted. 6, variance from section 10.5B 34.60 to allow a 30-foot setback for a small commercial building, whereas a maximum of 20 feet is permitted. 7, variance from section 10.5B 33.20 to allow less than 75% front lot line build-out, whereas a minimum of 75% is required for commercial buildings. Said property is located on Assessor Map 234, Lot 5, and lies within the Gateway Neighborhood Corridor District. Who is here to speak to this application?
Madam Chair, members of the Board, Attorney John Boson for the applicant. Given the makeup and size of the voting board tonight, we do wish to postpone.
Okay. And we will, I guess, we don't, do we have to take a motion to postpone?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? So what has happened is that we had told the applicants before tonight's meeting that there would be 5 voting members. According to our rules and regulation, when there are 5 voting members, we give them the option to postpone. because 4 affirmative votes are needed. What happened was Attorney Geffert was able to make the meeting sort of at the last minute, but this did not really, we had already told the applicants that they already had, that there would only be 5 members here. So we have decided to give all of the applicants tonight the option of postponing for another meeting. So with that explanation, do I hear a motion from a member of the board to postpone? Mr. Mannell?
Make a motion to postpone per the applicant's request.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Eleanor Geffert. So I will start down at this end of the board. Ms. Record?
Yes.
Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannell?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Ms. Geffert?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. The application is postponed to our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Bozen. Yes, Mr. Mannell?
I was going to say it, but you restarted the public hearing. We were not going to have a discussion about Fisher v. Dover.
We will postpone that application for the next time.
Okay,
That
thank you.
issue for the next time.
Okay, thank you.
We're just dealing with the postponement at this time. So the next order of business is C, the request of Joshua P. Lanzetti, owner, for property located at 255 McKinley Road, whereas relief is needed to construct additions to an existing single-family residence, which requires the following. 1, variances from section 10.521 to allow a front yard of 18 feet where 30 feet is required. B, a rear yard of 14 feet where 30 feet is required. And C, 23% building coverage where 20% is the maximum allowed. Said property is located on Assessor Map 250, Lot 16, and lies within the single residence B district. And who is here to speak to this application?
Hi, good evening. My name is Josh Lanzetta. I'm an attorney at Breton and Berube. I'm
And
here.
Attorney Lanzetta, do you wish to proceed with the application
I
tonight?
do. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Could you please present?
Great. So thanks for being here tonight for the second hearing this month. I've been traveling since 4 this morning, and I'm going to have some help with a presentation from Jillian tonight.
Excuse me 1 second. Excuse me, could you please take conversations outside of the chamber? We're dealing with an application right now. Thank you.
Okay, good. So I'll do my best to be brief. That was my point there. So I'm here with a very basic variance request tonight for my family. I've been living at 255 McKinley since 2017. I lived there with my 9-year-old son from my first relationship, and now with my wife and a 10-month-old. So Reed, Miles, Emily, and myself, and we have a dog named Charlie. I'm actually a land use lawyer, so I do this on a nightly basis. So this is the first time but it's the first time I've represented myself, and it's the first time I've been in front of Portsmouth. We're asking for 3 variances. We have a very small home. We have 960 square feet of finished space. I bought this when I was single and lived there with my son Reed when he was a toddler. I'm since married, and again, we have a 10-month-old, and we are quite literally spilling out of the house at the moment. The reason we're asking for the variance, we are desperate for entrance space and to expand our living area, not necessarily our bedroom area. And the way that our house is split up, and I'm going to show you pictures of this in a moment, to the right or to the east of the home, it's a single-story atomic ranch from 1961. We have 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. To the west, to the left of the home, when you're looking at it from the road, we have a garage, and in 2018, I renovated the kitchen and the living room, took a wall out, put a beam in, and so we have just one open kitchen and living room area. It's about 380 square feet. We have no real landing zone. I have a 9-year-old with footballs and kids with bikes and coming in and out. No real way to get in and out of the house, and we're trying to expand specifically the western side of the house so that we can make that living room a little bit larger, add a much-needed mudroom in the front and the back, and then Emily and I both work from home exclusively, and we're hoping to add an office space towards the back mudroom. We worked with an architect to come up with a design, and another unique factor besides this odd lot shape that we'll see here in a second is that this house is built with very odd bricks. I didn't put this in the application. It's not really material, but just as an aside, The bricks are 11 inches long and they're about 9 inches wide. You can't find them anymore. We framed in a picture window when I did the kitchen in 2018. The mason that I use, I've known for about 30 years. He's very good. I'm from New Hampshire, I'm from the Lakes region. We looked all over New England to find these bricks. We couldn't find them anywhere. So we kind of made do with what we could. But we're trying to use, or I'm proposing to use, in addition to staying on the west side of the lot, where I think the massing makes the most sense, we're hoping to honor the architecture of the home. We're just proposing a single-story addition, and I'm hoping to use the structural lintels that are already in the house. The house can't take an upward expansion. The bricks aren't strong enough to do that the way that they were laid on the west side of the house for the garage. We'd have to basically crunch the whole side of the house to be able to go up. We also have a cathedral ceiling in that space, so obviously can't go on top of that. And again, we don't really need extra bedroom space, which is all to the east side of the lot. So Julian, if you could page forward for me, I just want to get everyone oriented quickly with the property. Has everyone been to Elwyn Park, by the way? Okay. So everything in Elwyn Park was built kind of between 60 and 75, I think, from what I can tell. This is, everything you'll see today is taken from the internet today. I actually got back from a trip this afternoon, so these are as recent as you can get. This is just, you can see the watermark. That's where the house is located on McKinley. We're actually just across the street from Dondero and the soccer fields. If you could just page one forward, please. Thank you. This is Portsmouth's GIS software. And so I took just another kind of expanded image of the neighborhood, Elwyn Park in its entirety. And I think you can see, and we'll zoom in to see it, but you can see that the lot has a very odd shape. It's triangular in the back, which cuts off the west rear of the lot. In fact, a number of lots come to a point at the rear of my lot. It's a really odd block. And I think, and this is the zoomed in version, that on that last slide, I think the point that I'd like to make here regarding the shape of the lots, and again, this is just on GIS, there's no uniformity in Elwyn Park. And I guess that's to be expected, but I started doing a survey of the lots, and there's so many of them, I just didn't have time to get through all of them, but I probably looked at 80 lots in looking at this, and I took the measuring software in the GIS system and measured to the lot line. Now, that system is somewhat imperfect, but we found that there was about an 80% nonconformity in this particular neighborhood, which might be a discussion for the planning department and applying the SRB zone or some amendment to Elwyn Park specifically, or maybe for its own zone. But almost all of the homes in this neighborhood have one, if not two or three encroachment problems pre-existing, and the lots are kind of these odd size. Some lots are really big and some are tiny. But so you can see here very oddly shaped lots, and they all kind of come to a point at the back of our lot. The other thing to note here is that on our block, on both sides of the street and going in each direction, there are only 3 homes. So my house and the 2 to the west actually comply with the front setback requirement. No other house does. And most of the homes are averaging about 20 to 23 feet from in the front across the street there. And notably to the left, and I have a better picture of this coming up, but if you look at my left neighbor to the west, you can see here, this is the survey without the proposed additions, but you can see that their existing garage, which fronts on McKinley, so they front, their address is Harrison, but their garage entrance that they use on a daily basis for everyone to get in and out of the house is on McKinley. That's 18.1 feet from McKinley, or from the end of, or from the start of the public right-of-way, not necessarily from the pavement. It's a little bit further to the pavement. And what we did with this variance was we're just proposing to mimic the existing setbacks for directly abutting properties, both in the front and the back. If you could just page one more forward, please. Thank you. This again is in your packet. This shows a proposed 20-foot extension on the front of the home by 20 by 35 feet, and it shows 10.6 in the back by 26 feet. And again, what we did, we mirrored Brianna's, our neighbor to the left, we mirrored her setback for her home on the front, and then we mirrored Kevin's setback. The rear of my rear neighbor, the Queeleys, their house is approximately 13 feet from our lot line. And because of the pinch where our lot is triangular, you can see that the setback on this, we're non-conforming already. We're already encroaching in the proposed, or the current setback in SRB. So we proposed to go 10.6 feet out, which gets us about 14 feet from the lot line, so a little less than what Kevin's is now. You probably noticed in the packet, I included 3 letters of support. They're all from the neighbors that are the closest to this. So I have letters of support from the Harveys, now the Cliffords, she was recently married, the Queelys in the back, Bob and Pam Smith, 4 letters, and then also the Delisles, which are directly across the street. I did show the plans to Marcia Marchese, who is my neighbor to the east. She's in support of this. I also showed them to Rich and Michelle Barbizon, who live next to the Delisles across the street, and they're also in support of this. If you could just tab forward. Thank you. I'm sorry for the kind of errant highlighting. This is the same plan. I just wanted to draw your attention to the existing front setbacks in green and our proposed setback, which mirrors that, and then the existing rear setback in blue, and then the proposed setback in blue on our property. Looking at this as it's zoomed in, the reason we're proposing this again to the west of the property is because that is where our living room and our kitchen are, and it's one room. It's just a great room with a cathedral ceiling. So half of the house to the west is a cathedral ceiling with a kitchen and a living room. The rest of the house, the ceiling is lower at 7.6 and is all bedrooms. So everything to the right of this photo, if you split the house down the middle, are bedrooms and a stairway going to the basement. This would affect what we're trying to do, which is to have kind of an entrance landing zone. It would extend our garage, and then it would do the same thing in the back. It would give us an entrance and landing zone for the kids there, and then we'll try to sneak a small office back there. If you could page forward again, please. This was not in your packet, and I apologize. I did submit it today. This is a comp appraisal from Jen Madden. She's a real estate broker based in Rye. And I can address this with the variance criteria later, but I just wanted to put it in. I did submit this via CloudPoint today, along with one additional letter of support from Kevin Quealy. If you could just page forward again. We submitted elevations as part of the package. These are not in the packet. We don't have to talk about them, but I just wanted to show you the concept. We submitted with a 0 to 6 pitch roof, just because I don't know what the architects are going to do. We're working with an architect named Nova Teona. We could do some sort of flat roof. It's more likely that we'll do a gable, like a California gable roof. But in all regards, we're not going to go over the height of the existing ridgepole. So it's slightly outside of, the purview of the variance that we're talking about. But I just wanted to include them to show you that we are intending to work with an architect to figure out how to kind of honor the existing architecture of this home and the aesthetic of the neighborhood. If you could page forward, please. We can skip this. This is the elevation that I submitted. If you could go forward again, please. This was my rudimentary attempt with PowerPoint to show you guys some images before we were able to get a sketch from Nova. You can just keep paging through these, Jillian, if you don't mind. That's the back. That would be what a flat roof sort of looks like. And then the peaked roof is that's what they call a California gable. You'll note it comes in very low and below the ridgepole of the existing structure. A lot of the houses in the neighborhood have this sort of architecture. It's pretty boring. But just representing that it's going to be a single story, or that's the proposal. And I think that's, if you could go just a couple more forward, Jillian, I think that's all we have there.
That's it.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'll go quickly. I know I've submitted all the variance criteria and my arguments of why this makes sense and why I think it's reasonable. The first 3, I know you guys probably know these even better than me, but the court looks at those the same, and they're dealing with the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I know that this house has been at this location before the SRB zone existed, and applying a zone is always an imperfect event, especially in New England. The lots in this neighborhood are all irregular. Our lot is highly irregular. Our block is highly irregular. There's no real way to do anything to this lot that makes sense with the existing architecture and the needs of our family. And so I do think that the spirit of the ordinance is upheld here, because it would be unreasonable to deny this. The abutting neighbors all are within the encroachment that we're proposing. We're actually proposing less encroachment than they're proposing. And many of the abutting neighbors are over on their lot percentage as well. I included that comp appraisal, but generally, even if we don't have that in the packet, when you improve a property, I think, we get these, everyone's probably done a refi of their home or bought a home. When you do an appraisal for property value, if you add a structure to vacant land, the value of the land goes up. If you improve existing structures, the value of the land goes up. Those are kind of the general rules in real estate. In Portsmouth, we know what's happening here. The values go up astronomically. I do believe, from what I've seen in the comp appraisal, but just by, if we don't even take that into consideration, just based on reasonableness, the value of the property will increase, and therefore all of the values of the surrounding properties will increase in that neighborhood. And that's what a comp appraisal really shows you. Right now, I think the appraisal for the house currently is around $550,000. In Portsmouth, things are selling for likely $150,000 to $250,000 over appraised value. With the added square footage proposed, the appraisal would likely be conservatively in the 700s, which would then bring the sale price way up, and that would bring up all the property values in the surrounding neighborhood. To be clear, I'm just talking about appraised value. Our intent is to live in this home. Portsmouth, as you guys all know, it's so difficult to be here and to try to grow. The house prices are astronomical. I was fortunate to buy this place in 2017 before the prices really skyrocketed. But we're essentially stuck in this neighborhood. That's another unique thing about this application. I have a custody arrangement for my oldest boy. He goes to Dondero Elementary. He's thriving there. We don't want to move him. It's a great place to be stuck, but I actually can't move, technically, my family out of the Dondero school district. So I have kind of a postage stamp sized area to play with, and it's leaving me with two options. One, try to renovate this house, which is a tricky house. It's brick. The lintels are in very specific locations. It's very bisected with bedrooms on one side and the living area on the other. It's set back from the existing setback 8 feet. We could go forward 8 feet by right. That really doesn't get us the space that we need. So we're asking essentially for 12 feet of relief in the front. We can't go backwards on the left side of the house at all because of the way the property pinches. We're already non-conforming on that back part of the lot. So, or the other option is to buy $1 million house, which is pretty hard for everybody, I think, in our neighborhood. That's what they're on the market for right now. So it's a tricky situation for us. So expanding really is the best option. As far as number 5, so the one everyone wants to talk about, unnecessary hardship. So looking at that, we're applying the overlying zone to the specific property as the property sits now. This property is already non-conforming. It's very small. It's 9,800 square feet and change when the zone requires 15. Many of the lots in the neighborhood are in this size range, which makes that square footage really difficult for anyone trying to add to their house in this neighborhood. We proposed massing on the left-hand side of the lot where the driveway is currently located. We redid that driveway in 2018. It'd be very expensive to try to reconfigure this whole lot to move the driveway, move the garage, that sort of thing. And it might not even be possible. But it's reasonable to look at this and say, okay, these encroachments meet and mimic, directly mimic the existing structures abutting this property on 2 sides. So we're not asking for anything that isn't already currently on our block in the neighborhood. And if you were to zoom out and look at the whole neighborhood, you'd find these setbacks very common, both in the front and the rear. And then as far as coverage goes, again, we're just trying to reasonably expand this property using what's there. And I think that that's what the court looks at very intricately in New Hampshire. Is, you know, they look at what is on the property, what does the house look like, where is it located, why is it located there, and how long has it been there? And this has been there since before the SRB zone existed. And unfortunately, it's set back further than normal. So it made it more, not, when that zone was overlaid, it made this property immediately non-conforming to do anything as it is now, or to do anything further on that west side of the property. So I'm happy to answer questions. That's what I've got.
Questions for the applicant?
Well, before I get to the applicant, thank you. Why weren't the maps that were shown on that display part of the packet, not part of the packet?
The presentation was given to me prior to the meeting, and it looked like it had all the items that were in the packet. There were MapGeo maps included. in
Okay,
staff
because the
memo.
packet doesn't have any
Yeah.
area maps or specific maps for the lots or any presentation as to the applicant's, you know,
Yeah, so that was new information that was
Okay.
provided.
And I apologize. So I'm at one of these hearings like 2 or 3 nights a week for the last decade. And
was just asking a question.
no, I'd like to answer you
Okay.
though. So it's my habit to do my presentation. If you were to see how I did this 10 years ago to compare, it's always the same. So I always use Google Earth, the MapGeo map, and then parts of the application. I did bring that comp appraisal today as a supplement to the application, which is why I said I'm happy to not consider it tonight. But that's just professionally my habit. You know, it's information that is public, and so I use it kind of to the best of my ability here. I don't always feel like it's pertinent as a hard copy, but so it's just the way that I usually present. So it's just more about my presentation and less about the application. So I apologize if that's not the way. I've never presented in Portsmouth before.
It's traditional for the applicant to include everything he's going to present at their application meeting. That's all. Currently, this house has a 2-car garage?
It's a 1-car garage.
Okay, and you are eliminating the 1-car garage, correct?
No, we'd like to bring that forward 20 feet. So we're asking to come forward 20 feet by 35. So there would be, we'd essentially just bring that existing garage footprint forward, and then that would still leave us with about 4 spots in front of the garage, and then we'd have spots on the side of the garage as well. 2, most likely. We've talked about maybe bringing the pavement to the back of the house, but that we probably don't. It's just Emily and I that are driving.
And
So
this is where a complete application would help. Now, you are, the side lot variances in SRB are 10 feet, correct, Julian?
Correct.
Okay. So you have 8 feet in the front you can go. You have 13 feet on the right side of the property. And you could probably get at least 15 plus feet off the back side of the property without incurring any variances.
that's correct. But with the architecture that we have and the structure, not only would that be exceptionally expensive, prohibitively expensive, actually. And let me tell you why. We wouldn't be able to use any of the existing structure as far as openings. So we'd be cutting brick, putting in steel I-beams for support, or large LVLs. It also would expand. We'd have to reconfigure the entire layout of this house, which I gutted in 2018. We don't necessarily need bigger bedrooms. We need a bigger family area for the kids to be in. Right now, we've got a baby gate for our 10-month-old. We have nowhere. It's just such a small house. And to go to the back, where you're talking about on the east side, I acknowledge there is space back there, but it doesn't do anything with the existing structure of the house for us. Maybe we could put another bedroom back there, but there's no way to then take another bedroom and make it into the living space with the existing layout. And it just, it's completely away from what we're trying to expand or what we really need and what this house kind of allows us to do. So that's why we're asking to be on the left side. And I think it's reasonable because the other homes on that on both sides, both on the rear and on the side, have those existing setbacks. That we're asking for exactly what is abutting the property on the west side of the property. Also, if you look at the lot, using that lot, if you were to mass and put some sort of structure, which I don't know what that would be, like would we have 2 living rooms and you'd have to walk through someone's bedroom to get there? I don't really know. But that would take up the entire backyard. You know, right now, the hope is to put some high transom windows potentially on that rear addition, which would give us a lot of privacy with Kevin, and orient, you know, maybe a slider or some sort of glass door looking east. And that's where the triangle kind of opens up, and that's where we could try to grade that out and have a play area for the family.
This is a brick ranch, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there are no interior bearing walls? None?
No, that's actually not true. So the way that so inside the house, there is a hallway that bisects the house going from east to west. That hallway is, both walls in that hallway are load bearing. There's an LVL in the cathedral ceiling with point loads that are chased via LVL posts through those walls. The rafters are cut and sit on those walls, and there's an attic access in between in that hallway to get up into the attic. Those are structural.
Okay, so you plan to use the current garage as living space, correct?
The hope would be to turn that into a bedroom, yes.
Okay.
And then there's an existing door at the rear there and a window that have a lintel already that would allow us to go into the rear addition.
And the proposed rear addition that's going in the backyard is for a rear entrance and an office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the proposed front addition is for a garage and a front entrance, correct?
An entrance and the living room would be pulled out, and that would allow us to put a dining room table between that space and the kitchen.
The living room that's now one big room that's part of the kitchen?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's about 370 square feet total.
So you're going to
it's a
take
small room.
down that brick wall? and
No,
go to-
there's no wall. So currently, there's a bay window, and there's a header that spans there's a bay window, and there's a front door, and there's a header that spans that entire opening. And that's probably my fault for not putting a picture of the home into the PowerPoint, but that is basically already open and supported. And the load, if we were to do, especially a California gable, the load would come in right at the plate, and so there wouldn't be point loading there. That wouldn't be on the new foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any other board members? Okay. I do want to remind you that the renderings of the house are pretty basic, and you've also included other renderings tonight. But the representations that you make as to how the buildings look, that pitch or that flat roof, are considered, excuse me, are considered conditions upon which we might give you the variance. So if those change, you will have to come back to this board.
I understand that, and I appreciate that. My hope was to come before you this evening to ascertain if the structures would be permitted. My intent is to fully work with an architect before going through the building process. I do think it's likely that we will do the peaked roof, and my hope was to say this: one, we're going to work with a professional to design this properly, and two, in all regards, the peak of that roof, so what I put into the application was a 0 to 6 pitch potentially. Now, whether it was a shed roof or a California gable or even some sort of parapet, 0 to 6 degrees would cover that full range. I guess my hope was to then be able, to see if we were going to get this square footage first before we spend another $10,000 with an architect. So my ask would be to approve conditioned on not going above the existing ridge pole with whatever that roof line looks like.
Well, the reality is that it's for pitched or flat roof. But if we can't make the condition, the variance is conditioned upon everything that you presented here tonight.
understand.
If as a result of your architecture, things change, you are going to have to come back. So, and I recognize that you're an attorney representing yourself, so that would probably not require that much more cost. But, preferably it would have been better to have the entire application in front of us, and then you could have been sort of one and done. I understand why you did what you did, but I just want to make you aware of that.
I understand. We got a survey. The survey cost $6,500. We've already spent some money in architecture. If the board requires that we choose a roof line, I would ask that we choose a peaked roof line with the gable facing the street. I think that that's the most likely or the easiest way to frame this at the most minimal expense. And I have shown that in the application.
Well, I will leave that up to the board. That's not a decision for me to make. So, if that is a condition upon which they would be willing to approve the variance, I don't know sort of the feelings of the board at this point. So, for all board members, please keep that under consideration. Mr. Rossi?
I have a separate question. I'm not sure who to address this to, whether it's to you or to you. In the past, when we've looked at front setbacks, there's also a provision where you could look at the average setback on neighboring properties. What is the average? Do we know what the average setback is on neighboring properties? And is this consistent with what's in the neighborhood? Because again, I can only go by the information that we had available to review in advance of the meeting, which did not include some of the information that you presented. Not to belabor that point, I'm just saying that there may be information you went through that I just haven't been able to take into consideration. But it looks to me that the property, house number 265, is it, to the right of the lot line, of your lot line, is substantially farther set back than your proposed front building addition. And you're referencing a single point, which is really a corner of an outbuilding kind of on the left side property line. So it's not really apples to apples because you don't really have.
It's actually a garage that they park
The
in.
garage. Well, anyway, it's just the corner of the garage that comes close to the front. It's not the whole, facade, let's say. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison. So I was looking for that. What is the average setback on the? It doesn't have to necessarily be adjoining, but in that neighborhood, what is it?
So
Jillian has an answer.
Yeah,
for you.
I don't think I have that specific number, but we did take a look at the front yard averaging, which is he's asking about, and it was not working in favor of the proposed setback that is on this application.
it's a short block, and the three homes, the two homes directly to my east are at the depth that my house is at, which is about 38 feet. So
Actually,
that formula doesn't really do much. Like I said, we're asking for a 12-foot variance in the front essentially. And that, the garage, in looking at the facade, I understand your point because it's not squared.
Right.
It's slightly diagonal, but
Right.
when I look at facades or points for encroachment, I'm thinking about line of sight. And the line of sight up and down McKinley doesn't change if my house or even, or any of the houses to the east were to go out to 18 feet. The line of sight is still unobstructed. It's a very wide street, and it's very straight up until the bend at Harrison. So it wouldn't obstruct visibility in any way.
Is there a follow-up, Mr. Rossi?
Can I have a minute to think?
Sure, and I'll
Or
ask somebody
even
else if
Just
anybody.
30 seconds. So if somebody else has a question, please go ahead.
Anybody else have a question while Mr. Rossi takes his moment?
And I apologize, I don't have the average.
I see that.
There are, none of the houses across the street comply. They're all about 20 feet from the setback. And we could pull up, I don't have control of the computer tonight. Normally I would pull up a JS and we could start measuring, but when you look up and down McKinley, almost every house encroaches in some way on some setback. And many of them are much closer than 35 feet to the front. And I think it really matters. The intent of a front yard setback, as I understand it from a planning perspective, is to preserve sight lines when driving. And here, the road is very straight and wide. And we went out there, and we actually parked our cars. We had the neighbors come and look. That's how we got the letters of support. There's no visual, it doesn't impact the visibility while driving in any way. I think arguably it creates a much better layout with massing on this property, and it creates a lot more privacy. Right now, we've got a pretty janky bay window. It's kind of like a fishbowl. This actually would turn the windows, and I think that's why everyone was in favor of it.
Anything, Mr. Rossi?
So, Jillian, you looked at the properties across the street in that assessment of the front yard setbacks?
It would just be on the same side of the street,
That's the only thing you're allowed to do is look at the same side of the street.
right, within 200 feet of the property.
I see. It's, okay. I have no further questions.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing to, there's someone here, but, the public hearing is now open for those who would like to speak to, for, or against. I don't know if there are people out in the hall, but are there any people on Zoom?
There's no attendees on Zoom.
Jillian? Okay. All right, so I will close the public hearing. And I will ask the board for a motion or a discussion.
Well, I think what I have to say is really more commentary than a motion. I don't know if it'll build into that, but they're pretty big asks. I mean, these are big encroachments on the front and backyard setbacks. I kind of get the backyard a little bit more because of the shape of the lot. It's a right angle trapezium, so on the left side of the lot, that is why you have the encroachment problem, and I think there is a decent rationale presented as to why the rear addition has to be on that side of the lot from an economic perspective for the owner. I'm still uncomfortable about the front yard setback. I don't think it's, I was hoping that that your answer would be a little bit different, Jillian, that, if you look at it that way, it's more in line with what's in the neighborhood, but it's a significant deviation from what's already there. And I am concerned about that. And that I will end my commentary on that note.
Any other? Oh, Attorney Lanzetta, you can sit down. Actually, the public hearing is over. Lanzetta, I'm sorry. Any other comments, discussion? Mr. Mantle?
Yeah, I can't support the application, even though, granted, it's an odd-shaped lot, and it has inherent hardship, mainly because the current building is 23 feet away from the back lot, where the standard's 30. No, that's fine. But looking at McKinley Road on map geo is that the two houses on either side of them are basically the same setback as his house is. And noticing that the house that directly abuts them have an addition that goes along the largest side of their triangle lot. I don't believe, let me just pull it up again, that given the request, the back addition could be moved to the other side, since it's just an office and all he needs is a doorway to get to that office. And the front addition, he's looking for a variance. Let's see. He needs 30 feet. He wants a half of that, 20 feet. They're keeping the one-car garage, which means 20 feet is a lot for one car. It's not excessive, but at the same time, I don't see any reason why they can't move it back and have less of a impact on the front side on the lot. He has options. That and the fact that the increase in building height, even though 23% over 20 is minimus, the looking to add 1,000 square feet to a house that is already non-conforming. I don't like applications that make the property more non-conforming than it already is. Just my thoughts.
Any other thoughts or a motion by any board members?
Usually when we do have an application where something's becoming more non-conforming, there's some kind of a offset benefit where another aspect of the property becomes less non-conforming, but that is not the case in this particular application.
Can I move to reopen?
No. Sorry.
So is that a motion that's been denied?
You're not a member of
Not
the
yet.
board, Attorney Lanzetta.
No,
You
no,
can-
I understand that, but the public can move to reopen. I'd rather withdraw than,
It can't be withdrawn because the public hearing has already been heard.
but I'm moving to reopen, so that would have to be a denial. Sorry. Respectfully, you'd have to deny that motion.
Mr. Lanzetta, you're not a member of the board, so the public hearing has been closed.
That's a procedure.
There's no motions that come from the public.
So any other comments from any other members? Is there any kind of motion? I mean, since everybody else has spoken, as chair, I don't particularly want to speak that much, but I initially had a lot of problems with this application, wondering why the applicant couldn't go up, why the addition on the back couldn't go on the other side of the house, and with the addition to the front of the house. I feel reasonably satisfied that the applicant has actually answered those. I think that the front yard now is 38 feet, whereas 30 is required, and it is a 12-foot difference. It's 20 feet in terms of real building, but in terms of the front yard setback, it's actually 12 feet. So I am more comfortable with this application than I was, but I will wait for a motion from somebody from the board.
What would a motion look like?
Go ahead.
We're looking at RSA 674-33, Section 8, which has come up here in the past. ML, did you want to read that in?
I'm going to explain what I think we can do. So if a zoning, I'm just going to read the statute. If the zoning board of adjustment determines that it lacks sufficient information to make a final decision on an application, and the applicant does not consent to an extension, the board may in its discretion deny the application without prejudice, in which case the applicant may submit a new application for the same or substantially similar request for relief. If we follow that course of action, we would not create a Fisher v. Dover concern if the applicant wanted to return with a different request.
But I think that the issue is that we don't have enough information, that I don't think that people are comfortable with the application itself.
Well, that's what, but this says if we don't have enough information. If we determine that we lack sufficient information to make a final decision, and that's what I've been hearing, then we can deny without prejudice, and that will enable the applicant to come back to us, as opposed to a formal denial, which then creates a Fisher v. Dover issue. I believe we can, it's a funny wording in the statute, but I believe we can deny without prejudice. And the applicant has heard this back and forth, so understands there's more concern about the front than the back, and, you know, what people have said. Just saying.
I understand, I agree with you. I'm not sure that the concerns are we don't have enough information. I think that I don't know the temperature of the board here. I don't know if anybody thinks that we don't have enough information
And
upon
I would just say
which-
that was Mr. Manlow's point, that
but upon which to make the decision. It's just that we don't like the information that's given to us, but I'll,
Well, I mean, for the interest of preserving the board and the applicant's rights, I make the motion to deny without prejudice for an incomplete application.
okay. And then the result of that would be that,
They can resubmit the same application with more information. They can resubmit the same application being new, or a brand-new application. And Fisher v. Dover, as ML said, would not be a consideration.
well, I think that's different from 674-33-8, in that if we move to deny without prejudice in need of additional information, I don't think that means that that the applicant can submit a new application. I think they need to supplement the existing application. What do you think of that, Lillian?
Yes, I would agree. And if you're making that motion, I would suggest that you should include what information is lacking in your motion, so the applicant knows what they're lacking.
So, I mean, the rest of that, of the wording, though, and this is where I take ML's point, the wording is complicated, because the first paragraph reads, upon receipt of any application for action pursuant to this section, the zoning board of adjustment shall begin formal consideration and shall approve or disapprove such application within 90 days of the date of receipt, provided that the applicant may waive this requirement and consent to such extension as may be mutually agreeable. So how
That's
does,
for the time of the hearing of the application after submission.
Which is happening within 90 days.
Yeah.
okay.
I got it. Got one.
Well, I think Paul has made a motion.
Oh, you need a second.
We don't have a second. Is there a second for, Paul, if you could please restate the motion and see if we get a second?
I would like to deny the application, is it with or without?
Without.
Without, okay, just asking. So that the applicant has time to submit a more complete application, including maps of the neighborhoods, photos of the current structure, from all angles of the lot, photos of the neighborhood, how this would look if it was complete.
So renderings,
Correct.
okay. I think that is within the spirit of 674-33-8 because it relates to this application. So do I have a second to move to deny without prejudice?
I'll second that.
Okay. And discussion on the motion?
Does Paul need to restate that, or?
He doesn't. I just want to see,
The only thing I
If
would say
there's-
is that, in terms of additional information, I would like to see the setbacks of the existing properties across the street in the neighborhood, so that we can make a judgment about how consistent this would be with the character of the neighborhood.
Okay, even, I think the averaging setbacks only applied to 200 feet within the
I
subject
understand
property.
that, but
Okay.
there is the question of what is the character of the neighborhood? And
Okay.
I believe that additional information would shed some light on that.
Okay. Would it be possible for you to restate the motion so that we have a list of all of the information that we're asking for the applicant to provide at the next hearing, or at the, when the application is next heard?
Me?
No, Jillian.
Oh,
So the motion that I've heard is to deny without prejudice for lack of information, so that the applicant can return with a more complete application, including maps of the neighborhood, photos of the existing structure, and photos of the neighborhood, renderings of what the architecture will look like when it's built, and then an averaging setback calculation for the neighborhood.
Is that
That's
okay with
good.
the motion maker and the seconder?
Basically, I'm looking for, we've dealt with applications like this that involve multiple setbacks, doubling the size of the property, all of that. Okay, I think the planning staff knows what an application like that should entail, as opposed to, a HVAC in thing where the homeowner is doing one thing, and even that application had more information, more photos than this one. That's my point.
and I would only add, and this doesn't have to be part of the motion, but just to facilitate the discussion, assuming that the applicant wants to return, everything that the applicant plans to rely upon, sorry, I should get closer to the mic. Everything that the applicant plans to rely upon should be submitted so that we have it in advance to review it. It's very difficult for us to kind of make a snap judgment about maps or calculations or anything of that nature when we haven't had an opportunity to see it in advance. And so everything would be much better if the actual presentation materials are able to be considered by the board adequately in advance of the discussion.
And as we approve applications as presented, and as the chairman reminded the applicant, is any deviations will require him to come back, a more complete application,
Save
that may
steps.
not happen.
Yep, save steps.
Okay. I am just checking to make sure that, and I'm sure it is, 674-33, Section 8, our rules comport with that, and it does, because it talks about a denial without prejudice.
There we go.
Yes, Ms. Geffert.
I was going to say it's section E8, but it's not. I don't, just leave the citation, we can fix it later. 8, it is 8.
Mr. Nees?
Just a little bit unclear because I'm looking at the RSA, and at the end it says, "The board may in its discretion deny the application without prejudice." That part I understand. In which case, the applicant may submit a new application for the same or substantially similar request for relief. So there could be minor changes when it comes back.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It may not be just more information, there could be minor changes. Okay, thank you.
Is everybody okay with the motion and the second? And Jillian, is there anything that you would like to add as our extra planning staff?
Could actually win tonight.
Who would be lost without? Okay. All right, so I'm going to call the question. The motion is to deny without prejudice, and I'm going to start with Ms. Record.
Yes.
Mr. Nees?
Yes.
Mr. Mannell?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Ms. Geffert?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thanks. That is all the business that we have for today, so I will just wait a motion to adjourn.
Nobody make a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are are adjourned. Thank you.